Okay, one of the biggest lies, one of the most huge myths of all, and this is where the vocal minority loves to shout this from the housetops about the separation of church and state, and they use Thomas Jefferson as their example.
And they think it's in the Constitution a lot of times.
They do say it's in the Constitution. Jefferson did use the phrase separation church and state. The problem is, since 1947, no court and no book that I've seen has printed his entire letter, which is only about 3 paragraphs long, 200 words or whatever. And in that letter, he said separation church and state means the government can't stop a religious activity. Now, what we've done is we use 8 words out of the letter, wall of separation between church and state. Oh, we can't let religion get in government. Well, what did Jefferson do on that? This is the records of Congress from 1800. This is when they first moved in the Capitol. Jefferson is vice president for 3 months, then becomes president. This records, Article 1, Section 5, Paragraph 3 of the Constitution records that requires that everything said in Congress be written down. So this goes back to 1774. And as you go through here, they moved into Congress about the 17th of November, 1800. That's a brand new building. And about 2 weeks later, they're down to business. And so here on December the 4th, 1800, it said the Speaker of the House is Theodore Sedgwick, informed the House that the chaplains, informed that the chaplains had proposed, if agreeable to the House, to hold divine service every Sunday in their chamber. So what they're saying is, every Sunday, let's have church in the Capitol. Now, this is the House, Theodore Sedgwick. Now you got to get the Senate to go along with that. Who's head of the Senate? Thomas Jefferson. Absolutely, let's go along with it. So they have the House and Senate chaplain alternate Sundays, and they preach. Jefferson started going to church at the U.S. Capitol every Sunday. When he was vice president, he went for 8 years as president. One of the preachers one time asked him, said, why do you go to church at the Capitol? He said, because I'm the chief magistrate of the United States. I need to set my example that Christianity is the religion.
Yes.
It talks about how I've got to be at church. Now, Marcus, take this. Read the title of that and read where it's preached, if you would. Johnny,
okay,
here's one for you to look at.
I will.
Okay.
What's the title?
Okay, this says Sermon from the Capitol on the what is that word? Imperishable and saving words of Christ, delivered in the hall of the House of Representatives on a Sunday morning, and by T.H. Stockton, chaplain.
He's the House chaplain. He's preaching at the church service in the Capitol, and he's preaching on the imperishable and saving words of Christ. How come he can preach a sermon like that in the Capitol? Because Jefferson signed off and said, this is what we want. What's yours say, John?
Okay. Mine says, the sermon on the public worship of God, delivered in the hall of the House of Representatives, Sunday, January 31st, 1864, by Reverend B. Sunderland, D., the pastor of First Presbyterian Church.
So what happens is Jefferson helps initiate this church, and it lasts for nearly a century. And here we are long after Jefferson's dead, and you still got this church at the Capitol, and you had 2,000 people a week cram into the chamber there at the House to do that. So if Jefferson wants separation of church and state, then what's that all about? This is a newspaper. This is from, the date on this is 1803, and it has a treaty that Jefferson just signed with the Kaskaskia Indians. And in this treaty, Jefferson gives federal funds to send Catholic priests to teach the Indians because they're Catholics, and he gives federal funds to build them a church. Now, what separationist would give federal funds to send a preacher to preach the gospel and to build a church? Jefferson would. Jefferson did.
So and to make this clear, what Thomas Jefferson, it was a letter to the Danbury Baptist
that's right,
in Connecticut. They were concerned about the government getting involved in the church, but there was no concern about the church getting involved in the government. Ladies and gentlemen, the reason America exists today is because men and women braved the treacherous seas to leave England because they wanted religious freedom. That's why this country was founded. Is that true or not?
It is true. And Jefferson, just continuing with that, Jefferson is now President of the United States in 1800, or 1801, he assumes office. which means under the Constitution, Washington, D.C. can never be a state. It's going to be a separate territory, so you don't have a relationship to a state. You're not favoring one state, which means the President of the United States is over education, over so much there. So Jefferson gets appointed President of the School Board in Washington, D.C. public schools. Now he says, I got other stuff to do. I can't be President of the School Board, but I will serve on the board. He authored the plan of education for Washington, D.C. public schools, put these two books in as the reading textbooks for D.C. public schools. This one is the Bible.
Wow.
So he starts out by having kids learn to read out of the Bible. The other book he put in is this one. Joni, you'll like this one. This book is Isaac Watts' hymnal. That's where we get Joy to the World and I, Soldier of the Cross. But in the early days of hymnals, there's no music inside. You literally had to have a cantor sing the song, you'd repeat it. But this is the first one to start introducing music. There's some of the very early music.
Oh, wow.
And so these are the two books they used in Washington, D.C. public schools by Thomas Jefferson to teach kids how to read. And so you're telling me that Jefferson wanted a secular country? That he didn't want the word God said at graduation? That he didn't want the Bible in schools? And this is the problem with not knowing truth or hearing something on the internet. Hey, Jefferson fathered him and children. Dig into it. Check the truth. See if that actually happened. By the way, they retracted the story. Why did they do that? Because the evidence wasn't there.
Wow.
So there's a lot of stuff, but the same with Jefferson and religion. He was not a secularist. He was an anti-secularist.
So every time you hear on the news by one of the commentators, well, this is, separation of church and state, you can know the true validity of where that came from. This is interesting. I know I'm being very careful because this is so old, but this sermon from 1864 by Reverend Sunderland, I love it, honey. It says, he's preaching from Isaiah 66:23. He says, "This is a marvelous prediction. What a day for the world when the worship of God from month to month and from week to week shall be universal. The worship of God implies the highest acts of which a rational creature is capable. It demands all the powers of body and soul. In any case, however, to be real, it must be spiritual, whatever may be the outward act by which it is expressed. God is a spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth." And what does this mean? But that homage which is due to God as the Father of spirits and the Supreme King in the acts of worship, we render to God an acknowledgement of his right to rule over us, of the supreme authority of his law and the righteousness of his kingdom and dominion. And he just goes on and on. I mean, and this was going on in the hall of the House of Representatives in 1864. And this is what Thomas Jefferson was allowing to be preached. Is there no doubt what our founding fathers believed?
You take that sermon, and what you've got going at the time is the senators and congressmen still go to church at the Capitol, and Abraham Lincoln is now attending church at the Capitol because he's the president. The president regularly went to church. So consider what you just read, Joni, is what our national leaders are hearing every week at the Capitol. This kind of content, and this is unequivocal. And now, just 4 years ago, we had Louis Giglio that was going to pray the prayer at the inauguration. They found out, oh, you preach a sermon, you can't be the guy to pray the prayer. Really? How did we go from this to that? And it's because we don't know. And that's exactly why we did the Jefferson Lies, so that people would know truth and get back to it and have a different view of public policy. I mean, we shouldn't be putting up with the secular public square.
Well, in just a moment, we're going to ask Rita Springer to sing another song. But probably one of the worst things that they said about Jefferson was that he wrote his own Bible and then he edited out things from the original Bible he didn't like.
Yeah, not true at all. As a matter of fact, I brought this. This is the largest Bible ever printed in America today, 1796.
Wow.
This Bible, it's actually 3 volumes. And if Jefferson hated the Bible so much he cut out the stuff, then obviously he hates the Bible. Then why did he help fund the production of this Bible? This John Thompson Bible, largest in the United States. Jefferson's one of the funders of it. You also have the Thomas Scott Bible, another Bible Jefferson helped fund, 8 volumes. You have this Bible, the Charles Thompson Bible. Jefferson tried to help fund this. Jefferson's out funding Bibles, and he put the Bible in public schools. So what's this deal about him hating the Bible? In 1803, he had a sermon sent to him from Scotland, and the sermon said, hey, if you're trying to evangelize the American Indians, don't give them the Bible. They might read the genealogies, they might read Leviticus. Give them the teachings of Jesus. Jefferson thought that's a great idea. He went through the Gospels, cut out the red letters of Jesus, pasted them all end to end, and it has Jesus healing the sick, Jesus raising the dead, demons being cast out,
Wow.
Jesus the Son of God. It has the rest. And we're told that Jefferson cut out all the miraculous stuff. Have you ever read that book? You said nobody's ever read that. They're just repeating what Professor said. So Jefferson did all these, helped do all these Bibles. And the second book he did is this one. This is called The Life and Morals of Jesus of Nazareth. You can actually see the title Jefferson wrote in his own handwriting here. The Life and Morals of Jesus of Nazareth, right there. And he said, you know, if people will live by Jesus' teachings, we'll have a good nation.
So that's Thomas Jefferson's handwriting,
That's
where he personally
Jefferson's
wrote
handwriting. And he listed 81 teachings of Jesus that everyone should study. So it's the Golden Rule, the Good Samaritan, forgiving your enemies, turning the other cheek, the Great Commandment. And so Congress found out about this. And in 1902, they did this. This is the congressional edition. For 50 years, they gave this book to every member of Congress and said, if you'll live by the morals of Jesus, you won't have corruption, you won't have trouble.
Wonderful.
And this is what Jefferson did. This is what they also call the Jefferson Bible, which also has spiritual stuff in this as well, teachings of Jesus.
Okay, listen to me. We're going to go to this song, but you need to get this book. I was sitting there, and it just felt like the Holy Spirit, who, by the way, is called the Spirit of Truth. Every pastor in America needs to read this. Every school teacher in America needs to read this. And parents, you need to read this, because we lose so many of our kids when they go off to college. They get their secular professors. Many of them are atheists. You know why a lot of them are atheists? Because if you're an atheist and you say there's no God, then you don't have to live according to his laws. You don't have to be accountable to him. That's the number one reason why most people are atheists, because they don't want to be subservient to God. So parents, get this book. And then during your family times, don't take a lot of it each time, but a little bit each time, and just read it or point it out and show them, so they'll see what our true history is. And this is going to help a lot of young people to not then be blindsided when they get some atheist professor with revisionist history. So get this book. There's a website on the screen, wallbuilders.com, or I'm sure you can go to amazon.com and order it online.